Okay guys, so today I'm going to be explaining the Ēzrak alphabet, but specifically the Greek one, sadly. But I'm going to make another video explaining the more authentic Ēzrak alphabet. So just let's get started. First of all, the first letter of the Greek version of the Ēzrak alphabet is of course alpha, as it is in the regular Greek alphabet, shown right here. Now, alpha makes the sound ah, obviously, and it always makes the sound ah, and it never makes any other sound, so that's very easy to remember. Then the next letter is vita. So if you've heard beta, you're wrong, it's vita. That's how it's pronounced in Greek too. But except in this version, there's two versions of vita. So there's the version without the dot, which makes the regular V sound, like an English letter V, and then the one with the dot makes the sound of the English letter B, B. And the next letter is gamma, same as in Greek, but also I know you might have heard gamma, but it's gamma. This one's kind of hard to pronounce, so it's like, I can't really think of any instances in English where you would use a sound, but similar to how some people pronounce a G in Spanish words, like in fuego or amigo or something like that. Or also, I guess you could just pretend to gargle with no water, but it's kind of, if you're not trained for it, it's kind of difficult to make. So just say a G sound if you can't. But there's also, the same way there is with Vita, there's also a dotted version. And this dotted gamma makes the sound G, as you might expect. Yeah, the next letter then is delta. And so it makes, without the dot, it makes the sound th, like the TH in the. But with the dot, it makes the sound as a normal letter D in English. So D. Remember, for these first three consonant letters, they're going to be dotted and undotted versions, but other than that, you're not going to have to worry about this. Now, the next letter is another vowel, epsilon, which makes the sound e and always e. So a short e, basically it. And now here's where it gets interesting. So normally the Greek alphabet you would skip from epsilon to zeta, but not in the Ēzrak Greek alphabet. Because if you're really a language nerd, you'll know the Greek alphabet used to have an extra letter between epsilon and zeta. And it's usually referred to as a digamma, but it was really called something like vav or something like that. Also, if you know the Hebrew alphabet, there's a letter called vav in the same spot. So for Ēzrak, there is a W sort of sound. So I thought, why not bring it back? It looks just like this, like an F. And in Ēzrak, it's called Wav. So that's pretty easy to remember if you know the history, but just keep in mind I'm going to be adding some new letters and changing some letters from the original Greek sound. Now next is, of course, zeta. So it makes the same sound as letter Z, that's all there is to it. But there is actually a case in a digraph, which is kind of like a diphthong but with consonants, so which I will explain later, where it can make a slightly different sound. Next is the letter ita. It looks like an H, but it's called ita in Greek. But in Ēzrak, it's slightly different. I've sadly decided to use the incorrect pronunciation that many people use, A. And that is because in Greek there are 3 letters that make the E sound. So I just decided to make a slightly different sound for each one. So ita is now eta, sadly. Not to um, say anything good about the Erasmian pronunciation of Greek, but that's how it is in Ēzrak. And remember, it's not an H, it's a vowel A. So next is another letter I sort of added. So this one's called, well, I call it heta or hita, whichever way you want to pronounce it. So it's basically half of an H, like this, and it just makes the regular H sound. And it's kind of rare. It might be one of my rarest letters in both the regular Ēzrak, like its equivalent in the regular Ēzrak script, and in the Greek version. But you'll see it show up once in a while. And one thing that's interesting about it is that it's like, it also has some historical basis to it, but I'm not going to explain all of that now. So next is the letter theta. So theta is makes what in English the TH sound, which sadly we don't have a letter for anymore. We used to have 2, but that's another story. Basically, the TH as in thing or think, whatever word you, but it's different from, it's important to realize it's a different sound than the TH in the or that or this, because that would be covered by the delta, so that's an important distinction to remember. The next is iota, like looks like this, like an I, makes the E sound, pretty simple. Next is this is called the long iota, and this is basically, I completely invented this, but basically stole it from the concept of the English letter J. It looks like a J, except the lowercase one doesn't have the dot, and it makes the same sound as an English Y, so y, but it's never a vowel, it's always a consonant. So I think that was an important addition. Next is letter kappa, makes the sound as the English letter K. Pretty simple, easy to remember. It looks the same too. Next is lambda, another easy one. It makes the L sound. And next is mi. It's not called mu, not even in Greek. Never call it that. And it makes the M sound as it looks. The next is ni, not called nu again, and looks like an N, sounds like an N, except the lowercase one looks like a V, so you have to be careful there to make sure you don't confuse it with the English letter V. The next is xi, not xi or xi, it's just called xi. Makes the x like a letter X, even at the beginning of a word though, even if it's at the beginning of the word, always makes an X sound. And it looks pretty cool too, so. Okay, I got interrupted a little bit, but now I'm back with a little friend. So, the next letter is Omicron. Looks like an O, sounds like kind of an O, fancy O, like O. Easy to remember, but it's not Omicron. Next is P, not pi, P. But obviously you know already what it is from math, and it makes the P sound. So that's easy to remember. Next, we have Quopa. Now this is another one, kind of like the Wav that I added. It makes the Qu sound. Originally, when it was in the Greek alphabet, it made more of a K sound, but I think use it for Qu is easy because that's a sound in Ēzrak that's not too common, but relatively common. So I decided to make use of it. So next is the letter Ro. Ro it looks like a P, but it sounds like an R. R. It's once you get over the fact that it looks a lot like a P, it's not too hard to remember. Then next is the letter Sigma. Sigma sounds like an S. And before I move on, though, I want to show how there's two variants of the lowercase sigma. There's one that's in the middle of a word and one that's at the end of a word. And that's all. It doesn't sound different. It's just that's how you write it. So you have to remember that. Next is Taf. And Taf sounds like a T. And it looks like a T. So it's easy to remember. And next is what in Greek is called ypsilon, not upsilon, sadly. But in Ēzrak, it's pronounced I. So because that's a sound in Ēzrak that's not even present in Greek, so like a short I in English, I. Again, there's 3 letters that make E sound in Greek, so I wanted to reuse 2 of them for different purposes. Next is Phi. Phi sounds like an F. Basically, that's it. But it looks way cooler than an F. Next is Chi, makes a Ch sound, kind of like that throaty German sound that you might have heard. Looks just like an X, so it's easy to remember. And then next is Psi. Looks like a fork or a trident, makes a ps sound. Even if it's at the beginning of a word, always ps. Kind of hard for American speakers sometimes, but it's in Greek too, so. So next letter, which is the last letter of the Greek alphabet, but not the last letter of the Ēzrak alphabet, is Omega. And it's not called Omega in Ēzrak necessarily, but it makes the sound O in Greek, just like the Omicron. But in Ēzrak, I wanted to make it a little more unique, so it's Oi instead, because that's a sound that occurs relatively commonly, I should have said, in Ēzrak. And it's just a good way to reuse a Greek letter that would otherwise be kind of useless. So, and you already know that's Omega, so yeah. And next up we have the Sho. This is a new one that I added, and it does have some obscure historical basis to it, but it was never it was never in like the official Greek alphabet. So it looks the same as the Old English letter thorn, which some of you may or may not know about. If you don't know about it, it doesn't make any difference. If you do, it might be kind of hard to remember that it makes a sh sound like sh. But yeah, so basically that's the end of my alphabet proper. But I do have one more letter that I generally put between ypsilon and phi, but was a letter, ligature, I don't really know exactly, so I just decided to put it at the end, but it's called U. It looks like this, and it makes the sound U as you would expect, because in Greek, omicron and ypsilon together is a, what do you call it, diphthong that makes U sound. So this one is basically just the letters smashed together, which is traditional, especially in like Byzantine style Greek. So that's really common. It's treated almost as like another vowel in Ēzrak. It's very common. So you're going to be seeing that. So basically, that's the end of the Ēzrak Greek alphabet. I will keep making videos in this series. Let me know if you like them. And I also am going to make one about the more like traditional Ēzrak alphabet that I made. So Stay tuned for that also. Goodbye.